I'm Lonnie, 32 years old, and the second son of Harold Porter, owner of Porter Construction. My entire life I lived in my brother Brent's shadow while my dad constantly reminded me I wasn't man enough to take over the family business. 3 years ago, after one brutal argument in his office, I walked away for good. Dad's words, "If you're so smart, start your own company," became my mission. Today my business thrives, while Porter Construction filed for bankruptcy. Success tastes sweet, but the family wounds still sting. Before I tell you how I turned rejection into an empire, drop a comment letting me know where you're watching from. Hit that like button, and subscribe to hear how I crushed my family's expectations. Growing up in Westfield, Indiana, the Porter name meant something. My father, Harold Porter, built Porter Construction from nothing 30 years ago, turning it into a respected mid-sized construction company with projects all across the Midwest. Dad was as old school as they come, ex-military, 6'2" hands calloused from decades of physical labor, and the kind of man who believed leadership meant being the strongest guy in the room. My brother Brent was the golden child from day one. 4 years older than me, he was everything Dad valued: athletic, charismatic, and able to command attention just by walking into a room. Brent played football, drank beer with the guys, and could charm clients with hunting stories and dirty jokes. That he rarely showed up on time, frequently disappeared during work hours, or messed up project estimates were facts Dad conveniently ignored. Mom Amanda tried her best to keep peace in the family. She'd whisper encouragement to me when Dad wasn't looking and occasionally defend my ideas at dinner, but ultimately she deferred to Dad's judgment. "That's just how your father is." Lonnie became her standard response whenever I questioned the unfairness. From an early age, I knew I was built differently. While Brent and Dad bonded over power tools and contact sports, I was the kid who read books about business management and developed spreadsheets for fun. I could look at building plans and immediately spot inefficiencies. I enjoyed the construction world just from a different angle: strategy, planning, innovation. But in Dad's world, that wasn't being a real man. When I was 12, I won the state math competition. My certificate was stuck to the refrigerator for a week before disappearing. That same month, Brent's football team placed third in regionals, and Dad built a special trophy case in the living room that's still there today. By 16, I was managing the company books after our accountant quit suddenly. I created a new filing system, caught several billing errors, and saved the company thousands of dollars. Dad's response: "Good job with that office stuff. Now come learn some real work." The next day, I was hauling lumber in 90-degree heat, while Brent drove the air-conditioned truck. Despite Dad's attitude, I developed a genuine interest in the construction industry. I saw its potential, the ways technology could transform outdated practices, how sustainable materials could open new markets. During high school, I worked summers at Porter Construction, not just because it was expected, but because I wanted to learn every aspect of the business. I graduated as valedictorian, earning a full scholarship to Indiana University's business program. Dad missed the ceremony because Brent had a minor fender bender that same day. "Your brother needs me," he explained over the phone while I stood alone in my cap and gown. That summer, I modernized the company's paper scheduling system, bringing it digital. The efficiency improved job completion times by 15%, but Dad credited the improvement to Brent's crew management skills. The truth was, Brent's crews were constantly behind schedule, and his projects regularly went over budget. One night, I overheard a client complaining about Brent showing up to a site visibly hungover. Dad laughed it off, saying, "Boys will be boys." The client ended up paying $10,000 in rush fees because the project fell behind. The narrative was always the same. Brent's mistakes were charming quirks, mine were fundamental character flaws. My senior year of high school, I created a detailed business proposal for expanding Porter Construction into commercial projects, complete with market analysis and financing options. I spent months researching it, excited to show Dad how we could grow the company. He flipped through it for less than 5 minutes before setting it aside. "This looks complicated," he said. "Construction isn't complicated, Lonnie. You bid jobs, you win jobs, you build stuff. All these fancy charts don't put nails in wood." Later that night, I found my proposal in the trash. I fished it out and kept it in my desk drawer, a reminder of the divide between Dad's vision for the company and mine. Despite these experiences, I still believed I could prove myself, that eventually Dad would see my value. I didn't understand yet that in his eyes I was fighting a battle I could never win. Not because I wasn't good enough, but because his definition of good would never include me. Despite Dad's indifference, I left for Indiana University with high hopes. "Business school is for people who can't do real work," he commented, as I packed my car. Brent, who had dropped out of community college after one semester, nodded in agreement from the couch, beer in hand at 10 in the morning. College opened my eyes to what the construction industry could be. My professors praised my insights and classmates sought my help on projects. For once, my analytical mind was an asset, not a liability. I double-majored in business management and sustainable development, making connections with forward-thinking industry leaders during internships at Davidson Construction and Midwest Builders, both larger competitors of Porter Construction. These companies were embracing technologies that Dad dismissed as fancy garbage: digital project management, green building practices, advanced materials. I saw firsthand how these innovations reduced costs, improved safety, and won lucrative contracts. Meanwhile, Porter Construction remained stubbornly rooted in 1985. During my junior year, I called home with excitement about an award-winning sustainable housing project I'd contributed to during my internship. Dad cut me off mid-sentence. "Great, but Brent just landed the Miller contract by taking the client fishing." The Miller contract was a simple garage extension that barely covered its costs, but in Dad's eyes it was a bigger win than any of my achievements. Every holiday break, I returned to work at Porter Construction, hoping to gradually implement what I was learning. Each time I found the company largely unchanged, except for signs of growing problems. Unpaid invoices piling up equipment, breaking down clients, expressing frustration with delays. Brent's role had expanded despite his track record. He now managed client relationships, which mostly meant taking people to steakhouses and putting the bills on the company card. He lived in a luxury apartment he couldn't afford, and drove a new truck every 2 years. Dad enabled all of it, proud of his son's success. After graduation, I returned home full-time, armed with my degrees and a determination to help modernize the family business. I still believed Porter Construction could thrive if Dad would just listen. My first week back, I presented a comprehensive digital tracking system for projects and inventory, a custom version of software I'd helped develop during my final internship. This could cut waste by 20% and improve scheduling efficiency, I explained, showing the projected savings. Dad scratched his beard. "Sounds expensive. And what happens when the computer breaks?" "No, we'll stick with the clipboards. They never crash." Instead of the management role I'd hoped for, Dad assigned me to office work, essentially fixing the messes that Brent's mismanagement created. I swallowed my pride and accepted, believing I could prove my worth through results. It was during this time I met Rachel Winters, a talented architect who occasionally contracted with Porter Construction. Unlike my family, Rachel immediately recognized my vision for what construction could be. We began dating after working late one night to salvage a project Brent had botched by ordering the wrong materials. "Your ideas could transform this company," she said. "Why doesn't your dad see that?" I didn't have a good answer. Every time I suggested improvements, digital blueprints, eco-friendly materials, streamlined bidding processes, Dad found reasons to say no. Meanwhile, our competitors were adopting these very innovations and winning contracts we once would have secured easily. 6 months after my return, Porter Construction lost its bid for the Riverside development, a $1 million project that would have stabilized the company for years. We lost to Davidson Construction, my former internship employer, specifically because of their integrated technology platform, essentially the same system I'd been pushing Dad to adopt. When I raised this point in the post-mortem meeting, Brent laughed. "Clients don't care about apps and websites, they care about relationships. We lost because you tech guys can't connect with real people." Dad nodded in agreement, though the rejection letter specifically cited our outdated project management approach as the deciding factor. Rachel helped me see what I was too close to notice: the company was in serious financial trouble. Through her industry contacts, I learned Porter Construction had been removed from several preferred contractor lists due to missed deadlines and quality issues. Most of these problems traced back to Brent's projects, but Dad refused to connect the dots. One evening, working late, I discovered an alarming pattern in our finances. The company was 3 months behind on payments to several suppliers. Equipment maintenance had been deferred to dangerous levels. Dad had taken out a second mortgage on their house to cover payroll. When I brought these concerns to Dad privately, he dismissed them. Construction has ups and downs. We've weathered worse. But we hadn't. Not according to the numbers. Porter Construction was slowly bleeding out, and Dad was too proud or too blind to see it. The final warning sign came when I overheard Brent on the phone with a major potential client, the Lakeside Medical Center. He was supposed to be confirming our bid presentation scheduled for the following morning. Instead, he was canceling, claiming a family emergency. 20 minutes later, I saw him leave the office in golf clothes. I stayed up all night preparing for the presentation myself, reworking our entire proposal to highlight value and efficiency rather than just the bottom-line price. The next morning, I arrived at the client's office only to find Dad already there, furious. "What are you doing here?" Brent said. He handled it. "Brent went golfing," I said quietly. "I came to save the presentation." Dad's face reddened. "You had no authority to change our bid. Go back to the office. I'll handle this." We lost the contract. The client later told Rachel they were impressed with our numbers but concerned about our disorganized leadership. That contract would have kept 15 workers employed through winter. Instead, Dad had to lay them off, blaming market conditions rather than Brent's irresponsibility or his own stubbornness. The writing was on the wall, but I still couldn't accept that Dad would let Porter Construction fail rather than change course. I still believed that facts and results would eventually matter more than perception and tradition. I was wrong. Porter Construction's 30th anniversary celebration should have been a moment of pride. Instead, it became the point of no return for my relationship with my family. Dad rented out the back room of Donovan's Steakhouse, inviting employees, longtime clients, and local business leaders. The mood was artificially upbeat, despite the company's deteriorating financial situation. After dinner, Dad stood to make what he called an important announcement. I expected cost-cutting measures, or perhaps finally acknowledging the company's need to modernize. I was prepared to publicly support him to help navigate the changes necessary for survival. 30 years ago, I started Porter Construction with nothing but a truck and a toolbox. Dad began champagne glass raised. Today, I'm proud to announce the next chapter. My son will be taking over as President of Operations effective next month. A momentary spark of hope had Dad finally recognized my capabilities. Had the countless nights rebuilding the company's financial models, the new clients I'd brought in despite our outdated methods, the innovations I'd implemented, despite resistance, had it all finally broken through. Then Dad clapped Brent on the shoulder. "Brent Porter has everything it takes to lead this company into the future. The clients love him, the crews respect him, and he knows this business from the ground up." The room applauded while I sat frozen, Rachel's hand tightening around mine under the table. Brent stood visibly drunk and gave a rambling speech about continuing the Porter legacy of good old-fashioned American craftsmanship. Dad wasn't finished. He turned to me with what he probably thought was a generous acknowledgement. "And Lonnie will continue managing the office operations, supporting his brother with all that computer stuff." Scattered laughter followed. After all, Dad continued, construction is about leadership, about being out there with the men, getting your hands dirty. Some people have that in their blood, and some. He looked directly at me. Some just don't have what it takes to lead men in this business. The public humiliation burned, but it was the fundamental unfairness that cut deepest. Everyone in that room knew Brent was irresponsible. Most knew Porter Construction was struggling because of outdated practices and mismanagement. Yet they nodded and applauded because that's what you did when Harold Porter spoke. Rachel tried to pull me away after the speeches, seeing the storm brewing, but I couldn't leave without saying something. I approached Dad at the bar where he was already celebrating with Brent. "Can we talk privately?" I asked, struggling to keep my voice steady. "Sure, son, but make it quick. We're about to do the anniversary toast." In the hallway outside the restrooms, I confronted him. "You're making a mistake. Brent isn't ready for this responsibility." Dad's smile disappeared. "This is exactly why it can't be you, Lonnie. You don't understand what leadership means in this industry. Men don't follow spreadsheets and efficiency reports. They follow results." I countered. "And Brent's projects consistently lose money. The company is barely staying afloat. That's business, Dad dismissed. Ups and downs. No, that's failure, I said more sharply than intended. I've seen the numbers you've been hiding. The second mortgage, the maxed credit lines, the deferred maintenance. You're 3 months away from insolvency. Dad's face darkened. You think you know everything because of some college degree. This company survived the 2008 crash. We'll survive this. Not with Brent in charge. He lost the Westlake contract because he showed up drunk to the meeting. That's a damn lie, Dad growled, though we both knew it wasn't. I have the email from their procurement officer, I said. They specifically cited his unprofessional behavior and alcohol odor as reasons for disqualification. For a moment I thought I'd broken through. Dad's expression flickered with doubt. Then Brent emerged from the restroom unsteady on his feet. What's going on, Dad? They're waiting for the toast. Dad's resolve hardened as he looked at his firstborn son. Nothing important. Just your brother questioning my decisions again. Classic Lonnie. Brent laughed. Always thinks he knows better than everyone else. I made one final attempt. Just look at the books. Look at the pattern. This isn't about me versus Brent. It's about saving the company you built. Dad stepped closer, his voice low but intense. Numbers on paper don't build buildings. Men do. Real men. Maybe if you'd spent more time on job sites instead of behind a desk, you'd understand that. The words hit exactly as intended. Every childhood slight, every dismissal of my contributions, every time my masculinity had been questioned because I used my brain instead of my brawn, it all crystallized in that moment. This company will fail under Brent's leadership, I said quietly, and you'll have no one to blame but yourself. Dad's face reddened. If you're so smart, go start your own company. See how far your fancy ideas get you in the real world. Maybe I will. Good luck, he scoffed. Construction is built on relationships, reputation, and experience. You can't download those from the internet. I returned to the table just long enough to tell Rachel I needed to leave. She gathered our things without question and followed me out. As we reached the parking lot, I heard the muffled cheers of the anniversary toast through the restaurant walls. That night I barely slept. Rachel stayed over listening as I processed the events of the evening, the culmination of years of dismissal and disrespect. You could do it, you know, she said around 3 a.m. Start your own company. With what I have some savings, but not enough to compete with an established business. You have knowledge they don't. Contacts they don't. A vision they can't see. Rachel sat up suddenly energized. And you have me. I'm tired of watching my designs get butchered by outdated construction methods. You'd leave your firm. For the right opportunity, in a heartbeat, we could do something different, something better. The idea took root, growing stronger as the night progressed. By morning, anger had transformed into determination. I wouldn't just start a company, I'd create the company Porter Construction could have been if Dad had listened. And I'd do it right under his nose in the same market, competing for the same contracts. It wasn't just about proving Dad wrong anymore. It was about proving myself right. The morning after the anniversary disaster, I tendered my resignation. Dad didn't try to change my mind. You'll be back when reality sets in, was all he said, not even looking up from his desk. Brent smirked from the doorway, already occupying the heir apparent position. I spent the next week crafting a comprehensive business plan. My approach would combine traditional construction expertise with sustainable practices and digital integration, everything Porter Construction resisted. Rachel contributed innovative architectural perspectives that would set us apart. We called it Nexus construction, symbolizing the connection between old and new tradition and innovation. With business plan in hand, I approached Midwest Bank for a small business loan. The loan officer, Mr. Harrington, was impressed with the plan but hesitant about my lack of assets. You've got the knowledge, but construction requires significant capital, he explained. And competing against an established family business, that's a tough road. The rejection stung but didn't deter me. I revised the plan, scaling down initial projections and focusing on specialized services Porter Construction didn't offer. Through a college connection, I secured a meeting with James Davidson, owner of Davidson Construction, a regional competitor who'd been trying to expand into our area. I'm not looking to sell out to a competitor, I clarified when we met. I'm looking for an investor who understands the industry and sees the potential in our approach. Davidson studied my proposal, particularly interested in the proprietary project management software I'd begun developing. Porter's son. Huh. Your dad won't like this. I'm counting on it, I admitted. He laughed. I've competed against Harold for 20 years, stubborn as they come, but he builds solid structures. Davidson flipped through the financial projections again. These numbers are aggressive, but not unreasonable. What are you offering? 20% equity for $200,000 in startup capital. Make it 25%, and I'll throw in equipment access until you can purchase your own. We shook hands, and Nexus Construction was born. Finding office space proved easier than expected. A small construction management firm had recently folded, leaving behind a modest office with basic furnishings. The location was perfect, just across town from Porter Construction, visible enough to make a statement but not so close as to appear petty. Rachel resigned from her firm to join as design director. Her former employer was understanding enough to contract her services, occasionally providing a small but steady income stream while we established ourselves. My college roommate Marcus, who'd gone on to manage sites for a national builder, signed on to oversee field operations. Diana Chen, a brilliant finance graduate I'd met during an internship, agreed to handle our books. With our core team assembled, we developed a business model that leveraged our strengths: Rachel's sustainable design expertise, Marcus's efficient management techniques, my technological integration, and Diana's financial discipline. We wouldn't try to outmuscle Porter Construction on traditional residential projects. Instead, we'd target the growing market for energy-efficient commercial renovations projects that required brains over brawn. The proprietary project management platform I developed became our secret weapon. It integrated every aspect of the construction process from initial design to final inspection with real-time updates accessible to clients. This transparency was revolutionary in an industry known for information silos and communication breakdowns. Our first contract came through one of Rachel's architectural contacts, a small office renovation for a tech startup. The budget was modest, but the client valued our digital-first approach and sustainability focus. We completed the project 3 days early and 5% under budget, documenting every step with our platform. The client was thrilled, particularly with the energy efficiency improvements that would reduce their operating costs. Their testimonial and before-after photos became the cornerstone of our marketing strategy. Word began to spread about the new construction company using innovative methods. We strategically priced subsequent bids to undercut Porter Construction when we competed directly. It meant thinner margins, but establishing our reputation was worth the short-term sacrifice. Each successful project strengthened our portfolio and validated our approach. Dad's reaction was predictably dismissive. Fancy offices and computer programs don't build structures, he told a mutual supplier who mentioned our growing reputation. He'll be bankrupt in a year. Brent took a more aggressive approach, attempting to poach Marcus with offers of a higher salary and management position. Marcus declined, telling me later he reeked of whiskey at 11 in the morning. Not exactly inspiring leadership. 6 months into our venture, my mother made a surprise visit to our office. She entered hesitantly, eyes taking in the modern space with its digital displays and collaborative work areas. "Your father doesn't know I'm here," she said immediately. "I just wanted to see what you've built." I gave her a tour explaining our integrated approach and showing her current projects. She said little until we reached the small break room where team photos were displayed alongside our core values statement. "He's worried, you know," she said suddenly. "Your father. He'd never admit it, but competing against you, it bothers him more than he shows. He's the one who suggested I start my own company. You know he didn't mean it." Mom sighed. "His pride just wouldn't let him back down." "Neither will mine," I replied, softer than intended. She nodded, understanding in her eyes. "Just remember, whatever happens with the businesses, we're still family." I wished I could believe that, but the wound was still too fresh. Our first year brought significant challenges. Cash flow remained tight despite careful management. Equipment rentals ate into profits. Some clients hesitated to trust a new company with larger projects. Every minor setback felt magnified under the pressure of competing with my family's established business. We countered by developing a strong social media presence highlighting our innovative approach. Videos demonstrating our real-time project tracking garnered industry attention. Side-by-side comparisons showed the efficiency gains possible with our methods, a direct contrast to Porter Construction's outdated practices. As word spread, a second investor approached us impressed by our early success. This additional funding allowed us to purchase essential equipment and expand to 15 employees, while Porter Construction began quietly laying off workers. Then came our first opportunity to directly bid against Porter Construction on a significant project, a community credit union renovation. Our proposal emphasized energy efficiency, schedule reliability, and transparent client communication. The initial investment would be higher, but operating costs would decrease substantially over time. When we won the contract, it felt like vindication. The credit union board specifically cited our forward-thinking approach and impressive technological integration as deciding factors. We executed the project flawlessly, completing 2 weeks ahead of schedule and precisely on budget. Client testimonials drove more business opportunities. Nexus Construction redefined our expectations of the construction process, the credit union president stated in a case study we published. Their digital platform eliminated the communication issues we've experienced with past projects. Each success built upon the last. Within 18 months, Nexus Construction had established itself as a legitimate competitor in the local market, particularly for clients seeking sustainable solutions and project transparency. We weren't yet as large as Porter Construction, but our trajectory pointed clearly upward, while theirs continued to decline. Through industry channels, we heard Porter Construction was struggling to adapt. Dad had reluctantly implemented a simplified version of digital project tracking, but without the integrated approach that made our system effective. Brent's leadership proved as problematic as I'd predicted, with client complaints increasing and skilled workers departing for more stable opportunities, some coming to work for us. The competition wasn't just business anymore. It had become a public referendum on two contrasting visions: Dad's traditional relationship-based approach versus my innovative, efficiency-focused model, and increasingly the market was choosing innovation. 2 years after founding Nexus Construction, the opportunity we'd been waiting for arrived. The city announced plans for the Riverside development project, a $30 million mixed-use development featuring retail space, offices, and sustainable housing units. It would be the largest construction project in the city's history, with potential to establish the winning company as the premier builder in the region. Both Porter Construction and Nexus Construction immediately began preparing bids. For Porter, winning would solve their financial problems and validate Dad's leadership approach. For us, it would cement our position as industry innovators and provide the capital needed for significant expansion. The approaches to bidding couldn't have been more different. Porter Construction leveraged their decades-long relationships with city officials and traditional construction reputation. Their proposal emphasized experience, local knowledge, and job creation values that resonated with the old guard on the city council. Our proposal focused on innovation, sustainability, and long-term value. Rachel designed an integrated energy system that would reduce operating costs by 30% compared to conventional methods. Our project management platform would provide city officials with real-time progress updates and complete transparency. We even included a virtual reality walkthrough of the completed development, allowing stakeholders to experience the space before construction began. Through industry contacts, I learned Porter Construction was in worse financial shape than I'd realized. They had maxed out their credit lines and were behind on payments to several suppliers. Winning the Riverside project wasn't just important for them, it was existential. This desperation led Brent to dangerous territory. Marcus overheard from former colleagues that Porter was cutting corners on their bid, using lower-grade materials than specified and underestimating labor costs to appear more competitive. They were essentially bidding at a loss, hoping to make up the difference through change orders once the contract was secured. Our team worked around the clock finalizing our proposal. Diana ensured our numbers were aggressive, but realistic, with sufficient margin to execute properly. Marcus developed a detailed staffing plan leveraging our more efficient processes. Rachel refined the sustainable elements to maximize value while controlling costs. The bid presentation to the City Council was scheduled for March 15th. I spent weeks preparing, knowing this would be a direct public confrontation with Dad and Brent. When the day arrived, the council chambers were packed with interested parties, including several Porter construction employees curious about the family drama. Porter presented first. Dad handled the introduction, emphasizing their 32 years of service to the community. Brent followed with the technical presentation, stumbling through several questions about energy efficiency and project management methodology. Their bid came in at $28 million, suspiciously low given material costs and project scope. When our turn came, I felt a strange calm. This wasn't just about beating Dad anymore. It was about demonstrating a better way forward for the industry I loved. Our presentation flowed seamlessly from Rachel's innovative design through Marcus's execution strategy to my demonstration of how our integrated platform would ensure quality, transparency, and efficiency. The council members' questions revealed genuine interest in our approach. The city manager seemed particularly impressed with our energy modeling showing long-term operational savings. Our bid price was $29.5 million higher than Porter's, but with demonstrated value justifications. As we concluded, I noticed Dad watching from the back row, his expression unreadable. Brent was conspicuously absent. The selection committee promised a decision within 2 weeks. Those 14 days felt like 14 months. We continued regular operations while anxiously awaiting news that would define our company's future. 10 days into the waiting period, I received a troubling call from James Davidson, our investor. "There's talk Porter Construction has an inside track with Councilman Phillips," he reported. Apparently, Harold pulled some strings with the Chamber of Commerce. Phillips owes him from way back. The information was disappointing but not surprising. Dad had always emphasized relationships over results. In the past, those connections had secured contracts despite superior bids from competitors. "Should we counter somehow?" I asked. "Not directly," Davidson advised. "But if there are legitimate concerns about Porter's bid or capabilities, now would be the time to ensure the committee has that information." The suggestion made me uncomfortable. I wanted to win fairly on the merits of our proposal. But if Dad was manipulating the process, perhaps transparency was justified. After careful consideration, I submitted a public records request for Porter Construction's recent building inspection reports. This wasn't insider information. Any citizen could request these documents, but few would know what to look for. The results were worse than expected. 3 recent Porter projects had failed initial safety inspections, with one receiving a stop work order until violations were corrected. Most concerning were patterns of code violations related to electrical work and structural supports, exactly the areas where their bid proposed cost savings. I debated whether to forward this information to the selection committee. It felt like a betrayal of family despite the professional justification. Rachel helped clarify my thinking. "If Porter Construction wins this contract and continues these practices, people could get hurt," she reasoned. "This isn't about your dad anymore. It's about public safety and professional integrity." The next morning, I submitted a formal letter to the committee highlighting our concerns about Porter Construction's recent inspection failures and their relevance to the Riverside project. I included only documented facts from public records, avoiding speculation or personal commentary. The remaining days passed in tense anticipation. Through supplier networks, we heard Porter Construction had failed to make payroll, with Dad securing an emergency loan against his personal assets. The local business journal published an article questioning the company's stability, citing late payments and reduced workforce. On the morning the decision was scheduled to be announced, my phone rang. Dad's name appeared on the screen, the first direct contact since I'd left the company. "You submitted those inspection reports to the committee," he said without preamble, his voice tight with anger. "They're public records, Dad. The committee should have all relevant information. You're trying to destroy everything I built," he accused. "Your own family's legacy." "I'm trying to build something better," I countered. "Porter Construction is failing because you and Brent refuse to adapt, not because of anything I've done." "If you think," he began, but was interrupted by someone in his office. When he returned to the call, his tone had changed. "This isn't over," he said quietly before hanging up. An hour later, my phone rang again, the city manager. "Mr. Porter, I'm pleased to inform you that Nexus Construction has been selected for the Riverside development project. The committee was particularly impressed with your integrated approach and sustainability features." Relief and validation washed over me. We had won fairly and on merit. Within minutes, the office erupted in celebration as word spread among our team. That evening, as we toasted our success, I received 2 more calls. The first was from Dad, a furious tirade about family loyalty and threats to contest the decision. "You're no son of mine," were his final words before disconnecting. The second call came from Brent, clearly intoxicated, demanding to know what I'd pulled to steal the contract. Before I could respond, Rachel took the phone and calmly informed him that Nexus Construction's office had security cameras and a no trespassing policy. He arrived 30 minutes later anyway, belligerent and unsteady, requiring security to escort him from the property. The victory felt hollow amid the family destruction. We had won the contract that would establish Nexus Construction as an industry leader, but at the cost of severing my last connections to my family. Rachel held me that night as reality settled in. I had succeeded professionally while failing completely at preserving any semblance of family relationship. The next morning, local business news reported that Porter Construction had defaulted on their primary business loan. Their equipment would be auctioned at the end of the month. Dad's 32-year legacy was ending, while our future was just beginning. Success and loss had never been so deeply intertwined. 6 months into the Riverside project, Nexus Construction was thriving beyond our projections. Our integrated approach had prevented typical mid-project complications, keeping us ahead of schedule and under budget. The city manager regularly brought visitors to tour the site, showcasing our innovations as examples of the future of municipal development. Meanwhile, Porter Construction's collapse was complete. They had filed for Chapter 7 bankruptcy, with all assets scheduled for liquidation. The company that had defined our community's skyline for 3 decades would soon exist only in completed structures and fading memories. I maintained emotional distance from these developments, channeling all energy into ensuring Riverside's success. Then Diana appeared in my office doorway one Tuesday afternoon, her expression grave. "Your mother called the main line," she said. "Your father's in the hospital. Heart attack." The news hit with unexpected force. Despite everything, he was still my father. "How bad?" She didn't say, just asked if you could come to Memorial Hospital. I found him in the cardiac unit, diminished against white sheets. Mom sat beside him, relief crossing her face when I entered. Brent was noticeably absent. "The doctor says it was stress-induced," Mom explained quietly. "Warning signs were there, but you know your father." Dad was awake but sedated, his normally commanding presence reduced by hospital gowns and monitoring equipment. He registered my arrival with a slight nod. "You didn't need to come," he said, voice raspy. "Yes, I did." An uncomfortable silence filled the room until Mom excused herself to find coffee, leaving us alone. "Bankruptcy trustee called yesterday," Dad said eventually. "Equipment auction next week." I nodded, unsure how to respond. Part of me felt vindicated. My predictions about the company's fate under Brent's leadership had proven accurate. But seeing Dad physically broken brought no satisfaction. "Where's Brent?" I asked. Dad's expression darkened. "Who knows? Been drinking more since everything fell apart. Blames me, blames you, blames everyone but himself." The admission surprised me. It was the closest Dad had ever come to acknowledging Brent's role in the company's demise. "Your project looks good," he continued, gesturing weakly toward the window where Riverside's construction cranes were visible in the distance. "City manager bragged about it at the council meeting. Said it's under budget." "It is." "How?" The question seemed genuine rather than accusatory. For the first time, Dad appeared interested in understanding rather than judging. "Integrated systems primarily," I explained. "The software eliminates redundancies and catches problems before they become expensive. Better materials mean fewer failures and callbacks. Sustainability features cost more up front, but save on operating expenses long term." Dad listened without interrupting a new experience in our relationship. When I finished, he was quiet for several moments. "I was wrong about some things," he said finally, each word seeming physically painful. "Not all of it, but some." From Harold Porter, this qualified acknowledgement was monumental. Before I could respond, the door burst open and Brent stormed in, red-faced and volatile. "Of course he's here," he spat, glaring at me. "Come to gloat while Dad's down." "Brent, don't," Dad started. "No, let's hear it." Brent continued, alcohol evident on his breath despite the early hour. Let the golden boy explain how destroying the family business was actually best for everyone. I didn't destroy anything, I replied evenly. Porter Construction failed because it refused to evolve. It failed because you stabbed us in the back, Brent shouted. Those inspection reports were public record, I interrupted. If your work had met code requirements, there would have been nothing to report. Brent lunged forward, but a nurse appeared in the doorway. This is a cardiac unit, she warned firmly. If you can't maintain appropriate behavior, you'll need to leave. Brent stormed out cursing. The nurse checked Dad's vitals, which had spiked during the confrontation, before leaving us alone again. He's been like that since the bankruptcy filing, Dad explained wearily. Refuses to take responsibility. The irony wasn't lost on me, Dad criticizing in Brent the very behavior he had enabled for decades. But this wasn't the time for pointing out past mistakes. The company was more than buildings and equipment, I said instead. It was knowledge, relationships, reputation. Those things don't have to disappear with the bankruptcy. Dad studied me suspiciously. What are you suggesting? Nothing specific right now. Just possibilities. We didn't achieve full reconciliation during that hospital visit, but something fundamental shifted. Dad had, in his limited way, acknowledged that my approach had merit. It wasn't an apology for years of dismissal, but it was a start. As Riverside progressed, Nexus Construction grew to over 50 employees. Industry publications featured our innovative methods, and builders from neighboring states visited to observe our integrated platform in action. We received an Urban Development Award for Sustainability Innovation, with the mayor presenting the plaque at a public ceremony. The success created a decision point I hadn't anticipated. Porter Construction's assets would soon be available at auction, including their workshop facility equipment and brand name. Purchasing them would be strategically sound. We needed expanded facilities for our growing operation, but emotionally complicated. The day before the auction, I visited the Porter Construction headquarters to conduct a preliminary inventory. The building stood partially emptied, with marked equipment awaiting removal. Decades of history were reduced to lot numbers and auction tags. In Dad's office, now stripped of personal items, I found a cabinet of old project journals dating back to the company's founding. Curiosity led me to open the earliest volume from 32 years ago. What I discovered changed my understanding of everything. Young Harold Porter had been an innovator in his time, experimenting with new methods and materials that his competitors considered risky. His early journals contained excitement about efficiency improvements and quality enhancements, the very values I thought he opposed. One entry particularly stood out: convinced Westfield Development to try the new insulation system. Costs more up front, but will save thousands in energy. Other builders stuck in the past, afraid to try anything new. That's my advantage. The parallels to my own thinking were undeniable. Somewhere along the way, the young innovator had become the resistant traditionalist, perhaps from fear of failure or simple comfort with established methods. The insight didn't excuse his treatment of me, but it provided context I'd never considered. At the auction, Nexus Construction successfully bid on the Porter workshop facility and select equipment. We declined to purchase. The company name Porter Construction had completed its story. Its lessons, however, would inform our future. The week after the auction, local news reported Brent's arrest for DUI, his third offense. He was sentenced to mandatory rehabilitation as part of a plea agreement. His fall from golden child to cautionary tale was complete, though I took no pleasure in his struggles. A feature article in Construction Innovation highlighted Nexus as the model for construction's digital transformation. The writer traced our rise against the backdrop of traditional companies failing to adapt, using Porter Construction as a case study, without realizing the family connection. The industry was changing exactly as I had predicted years earlier, when Dad dismissed my college-educated ideas. As we integrated the purchased equipment into our operations, I found myself reflecting on the journey. The victory had come at tremendous personal cost, yet had also created opportunities for our employees and clients that wouldn't have existed otherwise. The question remaining was whether the professional success and personal loss could ever be reconciled. 1 year after winning the Riverside project, Nexus Construction had transformed from ambitious startup to industry leader. We maintained offices in 3 cities, employed over 70 people, and had a project pipeline extending 18 months. The proprietary management platform had evolved into a software product licensed to other construction companies, creating an entirely new revenue stream. The journey from rejected son to successful entrepreneur had taught me painful but valuable lessons about business, family, and the complex intersection between them. Dad's recovery progressed slowly. After cardiac rehabilitation, he initially retreated from industry connections, embarrassed by the company's failure. Gradually, however, his natural tendency toward action reasserted itself. He began consulting informally with smaller contractors, sharing decades of practical knowledge while grudgingly adopting some newer methods. One Tuesday morning, my assistant announced an unexpected visitor. Dad stood in our reception area, examining the digital project display with unconcealed curiosity. "Thought I'd see what all the fuss is about," he said gruffly when I approached. "If you're not too busy." The tour was awkward initially, with Dad alternating between genuine interest and defensive comments about how we used to do things. But as we moved through the facility, showing him our integrated design studio, digital fabrication area, and project control center, his questions became more substantive and less comparative. In the equipment yard, he ran his hand along a Porter construction excavator we'd purchased at the auction, now repainted with the Nexus logo. "Looks good," he admitted. "You're maintaining the equipment properly." "We have a predictive maintenance system," I explained. "Sensors monitor performance and alert us before problems develop." "Fancy," he remarked, but without the dismissive tone that once characterized his responses to innovation. The most powerful moment came when we visited the Riverside project, now nearing completion. Dad walked silently through the structure, examining connections and finishes with a professional eye. At the central atrium, featuring a sustainable water management system integrated with architectural elements, he stopped. "This is good work," he said finally. "Different from how I would have done it, but good. Solid." From Harold Porter, this constituted high praise. The acknowledgement created space for a new tentative relationship, not the father-son dynamic of my childhood, but a respectful professional connection between builders with different approaches but shared fundamental values. Mom began joining us occasionally for lunch, relieved to see some healing in the family. She confided that Dad kept copies of articles about Nexus in his home office, though he'd never admit to studying our methods. 3 months after Dad's first visit, another unexpected development occurred. Brent, having completed rehabilitation, requested a meeting. I agreed with significant reservations. The brother who arrived at my office barely resembled the golden child who had tormented my early career. Sobriety and humility had replaced arrogance and entitlement. He spoke openly about his alcoholism and the self-deception that had contributed to Porter Construction's collapse. "I've been blaming everyone but myself," he admitted. "Dad enabled it, but I chose to believe I was better than I was. Watching you succeed while I hit bottom, it forced me to see myself clearly for the first time." Brent didn't ask for forgiveness or even understanding. Instead, he made a simple request. "I need a job. Not management, not client-facing. Just regular work where I can learn properly this time." The decision wasn't easy. Brent had significant industry knowledge but a problematic history. After consultation with our management team, we offered him an entry-level position in project coordination with clear performance expectations and a zero-tolerance policy for alcohol-related issues. "You'll report to Marcus, not me," I clarified. "And you'll start at the bottom, just like any other new hire." "That's fair," he agreed. "More than fair." Rachel, now my fiancée as well as business partner, supported the decision while acknowledging its risks. "People can change when they're ready," she observed. "And if he fails, at least you'll know you gave him a legitimate chance." The healing process wasn't linear or complete. Dad still occasionally made comments that minimized my achievements or idealized Porter Construction's legacy. Brent struggled with the humility required to learn new approaches. Family gatherings remained strained, with conversations carefully navigating around trigger topics. Yet progress was undeniable. The anger that once consumed me gradually transformed into something more constructive: determination to build differently, not just professionally but personally. I began to recognize how Dad's limited definition of masculinity and success had shaped my own insecurities, creating an opportunity to develop healthier perspectives. As our company expanded into neighboring states, I gained a deeper understanding of what Dad's generation had accomplished despite their limitations. They built with the knowledge available to them, just as we were doing with our more advanced tools. The tragedy wasn't that they built traditionally, but that some refused to evolve when better methods emerged. Mom noticed the change in my outlook. "You remind me of your father when he was young," she commented during a family dinner. "He was an innovator, once always looking for better ways to build. Somewhere along the way, he got scared of change." Dad grunted but didn't contradict her. Later, he pulled me aside. "Your mother exaggerates. But I did try some new things back then. Some worked, some didn't. That's still our approach," I acknowledged. "We just have better tools for testing ideas before implementing them." The conversation marked a turning point in our relationship, the first time we'd discussed construction as colleagues rather than as father and disappointed son. Nexus Construction continued to thrive, expanding our sustainability focus to include community development projects in underserved areas. The innovative methods that Dad once dismissed as impractical now generated profits that supported meaningful social impact. Brent, to everyone's surprise, including his own, excelled in his new role once freed from expectations to be something he wasn't. His personal knowledge of traditional construction methods complemented our innovative approach, creating unexpected synergies. The most profound lesson emerged gradually: success hadn't healed all wounds, but it had provided perspective that made healing possible. I no longer needed Dad's approval to validate my worth, which paradoxically made his occasional approval more meaningful when offered. The journey from rejected son to successful competitor had taught me that proving yourself and seeking approval are fundamentally different paths. The first builds strength. The second creates dependency. By choosing to prove my vision rather than win my father's endorsement, I had inadvertently created space for a healthier relationship when both of us were ready. As we broke ground on our largest project yet, a sustainable corporate campus designed entirely through our integrated platform, I reflected on the circular nature of innovation and tradition. Today's innovations become tomorrow's traditions, valuable until they prevent necessary evolution. The challenge isn't choosing between them, but knowing when each serves the greater purpose. Dad stood beside me at the groundbreaking ceremony, watching as digital displays showcased the finished design to assembled stakeholders. "Different world than when I started," he commented. "Different tools, same fundamentals," I replied. "Quality work that stands the test of time." He nodded, the closest we might ever come to perfect agreement. The company I built from rejection continues to grow, not because it defeated my father's vision, but because it evolved from it. The structures we create will stand long after family conflicts fade from memory, a testament to the enduring value of building things that last, whether buildings, businesses, or relationships. So I ask you, have you ever had to prove someone wrong to finally prove yourself right? Has a family member's doubt ever fueled your determination? Drop your stories in the comments below, and if this journey resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe for more real-life experiences. Remember, sometimes the greatest success comes from the deepest disappointment, and the buildings we construct in life are only as strong as the lessons we learn along the way. Thank you for listening to my story.